98FM's Dublin Talks. Weekdays from 10 a.m.
This is Adrian Kennedy with you until 12 o'clock. We are here every day of the week between 10 and 12 right here at Dublin's 98FM. Now, for our next discussion, I want to focus on the area of Ballymun. It's a huge area. Tens of thousands of people live there. But over the years, it's always had a bit of a bad reputation, and it finds it difficult to shake that image, even though €1 billion has been invested in the area in the last 10 or 12 or 15 years. Now, it hasn't been helped by the fact that there were two separate shootings happened in the area yesterday afternoon within the space of an hour and a half. A man was hospitalised with leg injuries in one incident, and a house was damaged following another incident. They were at Shangan and Belclare areas of Ballymun. And a local councillor has spoken out saying that the residents of Ballymun are living in misery due to a small amount of people in the area being involved in serious organised crime. Fianna Fáil councillor Paul McAuliffe has said that the local community is becoming increasingly concerned by open drug dealing on the streets in Ballymun. He said a number of individuals must not be allowed to disrupt community life in the area. But are things really that bad in the area? And is it a fair comment to say that residents are living in fear? One person commented on social media earlier saying, "Things are so bad in Ballymun and Solog in particular that I won't even let my kids play outside anymore." I would love to hear from you on 6797 981. You can text or WhatsApp the programme on 0877 98 98 98. 0877 98 98 98. Earlier on, when I mentioned we were even going to be discussing this, we got a message saying there's a lot of trouble in Ballymun on my road. I am terrified to go to the shops. It's on Shangan. The Gardaí are not doing enough, said that message. I'm joined on the line by Fianna Fáil councillor Paul McAuliffe. Paul, welcome to 98FM.
Good morning, Adrian. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Paul. Paul, tell me what the atmosphere is like, firstly, in Ballymun in the wake of those two separate shooting incidents within an hour and a half in broad daylight yesterday afternoon.
Well, I think the first thing to say is like any community would be, to have two shootings in such a short space of time is really shocking, and most people who are going about their business this morning in Ballymun are getting on with their life as they always do. But people are fearful that, well, this kind of gangland or criminal activity is taking place, that somebody innocent will be sucked into it and will be killed, as has been the case in the past. But I do want to start, Adrian, by saying though, like, whatever level of shootings can happen in Ballymun, nothing can wipe out the massive community spirit that's there, all the good work that's been done on the ground by community groups, all the fantastic work that we're doing to try and improve the reputation of Ballymun. And I suppose what we want to do is, we just want to make sure that it doesn't get back to the way things were before. Ballymun has come light years on from when heroin gripped it and so on. Yes. And I suppose there was a massive meeting which we had in Ballymun with the superintendent. I would have said there was more than 250 people at the meeting, and he heard loud and clear that there was an issue, and in fairness to him, he committed to having a response. Now, I don't think that response has been sustained over all the period since then, but there was a response from the Gardaí, and what we want to make sure is that continues. But this is an isolated, small number of people.
Okay, you say that there is an issue. What is the issue?
For me, Adrian, the issue is the open drug dealing that's happening in the area. A small number of locations, small number of people, but there are people driving into Ballymun, right, in their cars, and they're purchasing drugs from the small number of people that are selling them and are driving out. And people in Ballymun say that they look out their window and they can see, it's like a supermarket. They can nearly see the time and predict the time when people are going to be coming in. And this is not people from Ballymun. Of course, there's people from Ballymun who are drug addicts, like any community. But the vast majority of people who are coming in are people coming in from outside the area in cars. Often people you can see people going to work because they're in work vehicles, and people they're purchasing drugs in the area, and that is making people terrified. People are afraid to be seen looking out their windows in case they're being accused of snitching. People are afraid to ring the guards because they don't want to get sucked into what's going on. And that's what it's a typical issue. So the bad apple is spoiling for everybody else.
And as you said yourself, over the last 10 years, there has been dramatic improvements in Ballymun, and we have seen how the place is transformed. You're obviously very concerned that incidents like this, 2 shooting incidents within an hour and a half yesterday, is going to, drag the place back to where it came from?
Yeah, and I suppose as a public rep for the area, you're always worried that by even commenting on these shootings, you're giving them more airtime and you're giving them more publicity. But the flip side of that is, if we ignore it, then you're only hearing the negative about Ballymun. And you probably know, Adrian, there's a huge demand at the moment for us to have a shopping facility or a shopping centre built in Ballymun. We're out there looking for shops and retailers to open shops, and I don't want any significant increase in crime to frighten people like that.
And that's what I was about to say. Having incidents like this, and I saw it on the 6-1 news yesterday, 2 shooting incidents in Ballymun within an hour and a half, that just sends out the completely wrong message about the area, doesn't it?
Of course it does. But at the same token, we can't turn our eyes and pretend it's not happening either. No. So. And so you're caught in a catch-22 as a public rep of wanting the best for Ballymun and wanting to tell people about the good stuff that's happening there. But at the same token, when something like this happens, it does have an impact on our reputation. So that's why I'm saying I think the guards have responded to this.
Oh, sorry, I've lost you there. Paul, are you there?
A long time, and that took place in Ballymun about 8 or 10 weeks ago. There was a bit of a spike of response from the Gardaí, and I credit them for that. But it needs to continue, and it did peter off a little bit. These gangland crimes don't have any respect for anybody, not the guards, not the council, no one. And so it's only by us working together with the guards, with the council and the community that we can have reaction.
Okay,
but people are terrified.
You were mentioning how the plan is to get a nice shopping centre built in the area. I know somebody told me recently, on the lines of Charlesland or Charlestown, something like that in Ballymun. But then I get a message here a second ago, and it makes me wonder, would anybody ever open a shopping centre there? Because this message says, I've lived in Ballymun all my life. Most people that live in it are salt of the earth, but then you have gangs of young lads dealing drugs, robbing old people and physically assaulting people. Ballymun is worse now than it was in the 90s.
Well, I don't believe it's worse now, but I do believe that there's been a spreading crack cocaine across Dublin. I don't know if you can physically see people who are addicts of crack cocaine in a different way that you would see people addicted to other drugs. It's gone back to the days of when people were in heroin. Crack cocaine wastes your body. You require a hit every, intense hit every 6 minutes, they say. So, those people are more visible in the community. In the community, that doesn't mean that addiction has gone away or has changed. But there's no doubt that the impact of crack cocaine was one of the things that we talked about at the meeting. And that could be small stuff like begging, panhandling at shops and so on, because people are so desperate. It can also include petty burglaries and so on. But the big thing is that the fat cats in organised crime world are feeding off the misery of all of these people.
Okay, stay there for a second, because it was actually Derek who sent in that message. And Derek, you believe that Ballymun now is worse than Ballymun in the 90s?
It is indeed, yeah.
What makes it worse?
Just the new generation, the way they built all the houses and all, they built on top of all the old houses, and then they had people moving from Balcurras and Salog down to Shangang, and people from Shangang and Coachie moving up that way, and they were all fighting with each other over the years. So it's just that they're making it worse because they're all on top of each other. At least twice a week I do hear killings through the night, guaranteed, out on the street. It's just, there's drugs being sold everywhere. I've had people in the taxi telling me where they've dropped them home, Whiteacre and all, that all men have been robbed. They were asked to buy phones. The woman wouldn't buy a phone, so she was bet around 2 black eyes and robbed. There's constant robberies going on of old people and assault. It's just worse than it was back in the day. There's no shopping centres in Ballymun, there's no pubs, there's no nothing.
I mean, with the exception of Nan Super Value, there's nearly nothing.
Super Value. Other than that, there's no shopping centres, no nothing for the people. Now, don't get me wrong, 99% of the people in Ballymun are the salt of the earth. They're absolutely brilliant people, but you just have these gangsy uncles just do what they like.
So
I've had another guy in the car that works for Just Eat, his two friends. His motorbikes were robbed, two of them, when they were living in the Ballymun. And these guys are driving around on the roads, pulling wheelies past people, knocking people down on the pathways, one of them did. And then the guards would be sitting there looking at them in the car doing nothing. I've also witnessed that.
you see, we should
probably, and you're dead right, Derek, in a lot of what you say, but we should also acknowledge, like, it was only a couple of weeks ago that the guards took more than 30 motorbikes and scramblers off the streets in Ballymun. They did the same in Singles, and that happened as a result of the pressure of the community. And I think that's what we need to do now. Absolutely. And the crazy laws we have around scrambler bikes is one of the problems. The guards take the bikes off them, and then people come back down the next day, take the bike out, and are back out again. We can't physically crush bikes like we do in other cities in Liverpool and so on. So we do need to change the laws. But the one thing I'd say, Derek, is I think it's by the community, like you, people like you, standing up and telling the guards what the real thing is on the ground, that we'll get response, that we'll get resources. But the guards only have a certain amount. They need more resources too.
Derek, what distresses me a little bit as a taxpayer, and I know an awful lot of people when they hear this figure will go, oh my God, that €1 billion was invested into Ballymun with the regeneration of Ballymun, and you're telling me that the area is worse now than it ever was, worse now than when those horrible flats were still standing.
That's in my opinion. They never should have got rid of them flats in the towers. They should have done them up to sheriff for the people. But
Derek, can you imagine in the early 90s, right? Anybody telling you that there was 2 hotels in Ballymun, that one of the best fitness centres in the city was in Ballymun. You know what I mean? Like those things. Like Ballymun had been emptied out by decades of the council not looking after it. I know €1 billion sounds like a lot, Adrian, but the people of Ballymun deserve that €1 billion because they hadn't got it for decades.
OK, do me a favour, both of you. Stay on the line there for 1 second if you can, please. Our telephone number is 6797 981. You can text or WhatsApp us on 0877 98 98 98. Yesterday afternoon, there were 2 individual separate shootings, although Gardaí are trying to investigate if there's a link between the two. 2 separate shootings in Ballymun, one at Shangan and one at Belclare. A person was shot in Shangan, a house was shot up in Belclare. And we're asking basically, well, what the councillor that we're talking to, Paul McAuliffe, is saying that the residents of Ballymun are living in misery due to a small amount of people in the area being involved in serious organised crime. And with plans in the pipeline for a shopping centre and everything else, you have to wonder, would, stories like this put companies off opening in a major shopping centre in the area? I'd love to hear from you on this on 6797 981. In fact, a load of people have been in contact with us to say that Ballymun is worse now than it was in the 80s and 90s. Now, Frank, you're on 98FM. How are you, Frank?
Morning, Adrian. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Frank. We're talking about Ballymun and 2 shootings in the area, giving the area yet another bad licking. What did you want to say on this?
Well, as Paul, this is not about Ballymun. This is happening, Adrian, all over the city on a daily basis. I've been talking to you before about this. I mean, in the last 20 years in this country, the state, I'd say, break down a law and order. It wasn't too long ago, Adrian, in this country, that good men and women were brought to the Central Criminal Court and on the hearsay of a senior guard were locked up in a maximum security prison for 4 years with no evidence. Nowadays, we've got rapists, murderers, drug dealers coming in and out of the court. Now, is Paul still there, is he?
He is, yeah, he's still there, Paul.
How are you? Paul, how are you? Now, listen, I'm not going to have a go at parties here because really, you're all the same from the top down to the bottom. But your government, your party, Paul, was involved in power here for the longest out of them all nearly. And we are where we are today because of what they've left behind. Now, what I want to see Paul done, and you should start the ball rolling, Paul, if you have a set of balls, get on to me, Hall Martin, and get this raised. I want to see social welfare cut completely for every little screw and drug dealer and girl and scrote that's brought to the court and convicted of a crime, they're not looking for a job. Cut the social welfare, take everything off them. The drug dealers, you have cab going around at the minute, tied up in legal loopholes because they have to prove where the money comes from. If you have someone, Paul, that has no visible means of income, i.e. a job, I can prove to the tax man in one bank statement where my money comes from. Would you agree with me, Paul?
Well, there's a few things you said there, Frank.
No, but listen, I'm not finished. I'm not finished.
Hang on. You asked him, did he agree with you? Let him answer, for God's sake.
Right,
go on, Paul.
First thing, go back to your point about Ballymun, the history of Ballymun. Ballymun was built to clear the slums in town. A huge amount spent on it, but the project was never finished, right? You're right. Fianna Fáil was responsible for building Ballymun. We also spent €1 billion in the regeneration. And my only regret is that there wasn't money to spend on it in the last 11 years because we didn't finish the job. And I think that's the big problem that we've had in Ballymun is we have these big projects and we never finish them, right? But can I just say something to you about social welfare? Frank, social welfare is the basic level of income that people can survive off, okay? So if you're going to cut it for anybody, right, it's very, very difficult to live off. It's very, very difficult to live off. And anyone out there that says people on social welfare have a cushy life or people on disability have a cushy life, they don't. And so if you were to cut it at all, even for people, Frank, who are breaking the law, how will they survive? That's the whole point. Social welfare is the basic level of
the only way, Paul, you'll ever stop drug dealing, especially in any city, Paul. And you remember this in the future. Please God, you might be lucky. You might get to be a TD down the road, and you might get into senior power and do something. Is take the money away. Follow the money. People are claiming social welfare. They're going around with top of the range cars. They're dealing in cash. They don't care. They know when they go through the court it's a revolving door.
But when a 15-year-old young fella, Frank, a 15-year-old young fella is getting money every day for selling drugs, more than you get in a week in social welfare, what? The cutting the social welfare won't make any difference to him.
Paul, let me ask you a question. How do we... And you mentioned the shopping centre and the plans that have been on the boards for a long time. Is it ever going to happen? Because without something like that as a nerve centre for Ballymun, it has nothing.
And you know, I think it's the number one issue that you say to people, and after the issue of drug dealing, the number one issue people say is that where is the shopping centre? And I think what they're really saying is where are all the promises we were given? And I think they're right to say that because a lot of there was more than 3,500 people rehoused. But it was meant to be more than a rehousing project. It was meant to be a regeneration project. Yeah. And because of the way the economic cycle fell, we didn't get the opportunity to invest in Ballymun. We got IKEA. We didn't get more IKEA.
Okay,
now, that's starting to change. We are starting to bring shops in. I think I'd far rather have 10 or 15 good shops than be holding out for a white elephant shopping centre that's never going to come.
Okay, stay there for a second. Rebecca, you're on 98FM. Hiya, Rebecca.
Hi, how are you doing?
Rebecca, you sent us a message in a moment ago that you had to move out of Ballymun because of gangs on Slough Park.
Yeah, I had a beautiful apartment. I can't complain about the size of it. It was lovely. It was absolutely amazing. Everybody was astonished when I got it. Mm-hmm. But after a little while, the young lads started to grow up. And at one stage, there was 17 of them standing outside my door smoking hash. And they were plastered. I don't mean standing at the gate. I mean right at the door. So I could barely get out. And every single day that I tried to get out, it was like running the gauntlet trying to get out of my own house. When I asked them to move, they damaged my car. So I had just a horrendous time living there. The bins were piled up high. No rubbish removal, the stink, I couldn't open my windows. It was just horrific. And the hostility from people, and I'm 60 next week.
The hostility from people?
Pardon?
The hostility from people, what do you mean?
Hostility, I don't know why this hostility, but there was terrible hostility in the air, just hostile. And I don't know what's wrong with the young lads now and that are going there, because the hostility from them to other people One lady had her money robbed, her money taken, and then they stood outside and waved it into her window, waved it at her in the window and laughed. Like just a sheer badness, and that's all I can call it, because Ballymun was supposed to be this new regeneration and everybody had great hope, but the hope just disappeared. And I don't know whether it was because of lack of jobs or whatever the bigger problem is, or the drugs or whatever, but all hope just went. And you'd want to go through the back streets. You go down Ballymun Road and it's all spotless on either side and it looks very nice. It's tree lined. But you go round into the estate and you'll see a different picture altogether.
And Paul, unfortunately, she's right. I actually drive down the Ballymun Road every morning on my way to work, and it's well laid out, and you've the theatre on one side and you've apartments on the other, and it looks great. But she is right what she says. Take a left turn or a right turn at the crossroads and you're into a different world altogether.
Well, I don't know whether the D11 Transformers up in the courts in Ballymun would agree with you. They do amazing work in the form of Tidy Towns Committee. The Tidy Towns Committee for Ballymun every year gets record.
No, I know.
Record performances.
It's not even it's not even tidiness that Rebecca is talking about.
That exists, all right. You go up to Puppetry and you'll see that it's actually very, very nice, very clean. But you go down to Sillow Park. You tell me, and I'm not trying to say that work isn't good, but you go down to Sillow Park and you'll see something totally different. You'll see rubbish strewn everywhere, and you'll feel the hostility from people. You just walk down that road, Paul.
Well, of course, there's litter everywhere. Like I accept that, and the way it's solved is by people, communities, and like we were down in Coultry yesterday, and Josephine, all the ladies out there in Coultry have been we're all out painting boxes around trees.
Yeah,
and all.
Of course, I'm not saying they're not doing that, but you go into other parts of Ballymun, and for whatever the reason, there's pockets in Ballymun that it's like as if everybody else forgot. It's no man's land. It's horrible. And you can't deny that, Paul.
I think the real problem is that in a road of 20 or 25 people who are all doing their best and trying to improve the area, we're getting one family that's involved in drugs, and that's spoiling it for everyone.
Paul, when I hear of a lady like this...
Family, there was a whole gang, and their parents were looking at them while they were driving a car up and down the road, and this was only about 8 o'clock at night. They were still...
Paul, when I hear a lady who lived in the area in her 60s who had to move out because it was that bad, that makes me wonder, what in God's name did we spend €1 billion on?
Well, the €1 billion was spent on all the things you spoke about, the theatre and the 3,500 houses and all the rest of them. They all cost money. But the reality is that if there's gang hanging outside your house, the only people that can solve that is the guards. That's the only way you can resolve antisocial behaviour is a Garda response. There's no other agency, there's no other organisation, there's no one else equipped to do it. The guards are the only people that can tackle crime, and antisocial behaviour is one of those. So whatever level of stuff you put into an area, however great you make the literacy levels and the third level participation levels, and they've all gone up, by the way, if there's a gang outside a house, the only ones that can solve it are the guards. And unfortunately, we need to give the guards the resources to deal with it, because every time you give the guards resources, they come up trump results.
All right, so let me just bring in one last call on this, and that's you, Jay. You're on 98FM. How are you?
Morning, Adrian.
Morning, Jay. How are you?
Not bad. That was the worst €1 billion I think we've ever spent.
It would appear so when you hear people saying things like things are worse in Ballymun now than they were in the 90s.
All we've done is given them nicer places to wreck. And as for the shopping centre, you put a shopping centre in there, all you're going to do is feed the drug habit in that area, because it'll be the most shoplifted bloody shopping centre in the country. As for the pub, they had a pub, it was called the Towers. It was the worst pub in the city, they wrecked it. All we've done is scattered out the problem, took them out of the Towers and scattered them into houses. That woman that had to move at 60, that's a disgrace. That politician will not hear a bad word because he's a politician. That's the way they work. They sit on the fence. As for them, I mean, why not put them out of houses? He said it's one family causing trouble for 30 families. Get the one family out.
I mean, it all sounds simple, but
it's not. This business, and 99% of the people are salt of the earth, and that's bull. All right,
that's not bull. And
They're near
no.
50 in Ballymun. Listen, the people know what's going on there and they won't open their mouths. They're just pulling their blinds and hoping it goes away. They're all involved. They want to clean up their area, do what they done back in the 80s and 90s, drug marches, march on these feckers and get them out of their houses. There you go.
That man should apologise to people of Ballymun for what he just said. He just said that if we put a shopping centre in Ballymun, I
can't hear both of you. Sorry, Paul. Say that again.
Let's just reflect what he said. He said if we put a shopping centre in Ballymun, it'll feed the drug habit of everyone in Ballymun. It's the most ridiculous thing anyone has ever said on the air.
They'll be all over there shoplifting every day, and the only one that will make money there are security companies.
Paul, realistically, and let me just focus on this for a second. Do you see any prospect of a shopping centre or any big company, supermarket even, opening in Ballymun in the foreseeable future?
Absolutely. So Decathlon, as anybody knows, one of the biggest sports retailers. They co-locate with IKEA in lots of parts of the world. They provide discount sport goods. We just signed an agreement with them, and they're opening a new store next year. Lidl have just signed an agreement with us, and they're opening a new store next year. Is that good enough? No, we want more. But there is companies coming in, and yes, the shopping centre is the biggest broken promise of Ballymun. No point saying any otherwise. But people like that man coming on and saying that people of Ballymun don't deserve a shopping centre is disgrace. And that's the sort of stuff that put Ballymun in the limelight it was in for decades, and we're not going to take it anymore.
I got a message in a while ago, and this kind of worries me. I'm 21 years of age, have lived in Ballymun all my life, but I never admit where I live. It's a little bit sad, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I grew up in Finglas myself, Adrian, and I was told in school, don't put fingers on your job application because you won't get an answer. I think, thankfully, those days are gone.
No, not for that 21-year-old, it's not.
Well, you can imagine anyone like him that's working, and he goes in this morning, and his colleagues in work say, Jesus, are you safe? There's 2 shootings in your area last night. Of course it has an impact on you and the morale of the people living there. Of course it does. And that's what I'm saying. This small group of people are tarnishing the name of Ballymun. But by the way, it's not unique to Ballymun. Only about 6 or 8 weeks ago, I was in Drumcondra and Glasnevin, and there were similar issues around antisocial behaviour. So it is across the city, and we need to make sure that the guards have the resources between now and the next 2 years so they can respond to this.
Okay, let me just read out one last message. I live in Slogue Park, and she's absolutely right. My brother's car was smashed with a hurley while he could see me recording him. They actually don't care. You ring the Gardaí and they don't show up. We asked this person, would they come on air? No, we can't open our mouths because they target our houses. Someone had to move out recently because they kept going back to his house because he asked them to move on. That sounds terrifying. And I'll be honest with you, Paul, a huge amount of people sent us messages, and when we rang them back, no, too afraid to talk.
Aidan, I'm not saying that there's no crime in Ballymun. That'd be ridiculous. What I'm saying is that this serious crime is associated with a small number of people, and it shouldn't take away from the good name of the area, of the people living there, and of what we're trying to do.
Good to talk to you, Paul. Thanks very much indeed. That's
Thanks,
Paul McAuliffe. He's a Fianna Fáil councillor from the Ballymun area. It's 98FM's Dublin Talks.
98FM's Dublin Talks. Weekdays